Iga Swiatek just said something nobody at Wimbledon expected to hear. She didn't blame a big serve. She didn't blame raw power. She said a slow serve is what broke her. Let that sink in for a second. The reigning Wimbledon champion. One of the best return players walking the planet right now. And she's telling reporters that the hardest thing she faced all tournament wasn't speed. It was the opposite of speed. Here's the line that stopped everyone cold. Swiatek called it super slow. She said accepting those missed returns off a slow serve was tougher mentally than dealing with a normal one. Read that again. Tougher than a normal serve. Coming from a woman who has spent years dismantling some of the fastest, heaviest serves in the sport. So who did this to her? A 21-year-old from the Philippines, world number 32. Seeded 29 at this tournament. Someone most casual. Tennis fans had never heard of 12 months ago. And she didn't just beat Swiatek. She walked into center court, the biggest stage in tennis, and dismantled the defending champion's mental game using a shot that looks, on paper, like a weakness. That's the part that doesn't add up yet. A slow serve is supposed to be an opening. It's supposed to be free points for the returner. Coaches spend years teaching players to attack second serves, to punish anything under 90 miles an hour. So how does a shot built to be attacked end up being the thing a Grand Slam champion says broke her down mentally? By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what happened inside that match. You're going to understand why a slower ball can be more dangerous than a faster one at the highest level of the sport. And you're going to understand why Iga Swiatek, of all people, was the one to say it out loud. But to get there, we have to go back to center court. Back to the exact moment this so-called weakness started taking the number 3 seed apart, point by point, game by game. Let's talk about who was actually standing across the net that day. On one side, Iga Swiatek, defending Wimbledon champion, seeded 3rd in the world, a player whose return game is considered one of the most dangerous in women's tennis. She had won this exact tournament 12 months earlier. She was supposed to be untouchable on this court. On the other side, Alex Eala, 21 years old, world number 32, seeded 29, a player from a country that had never, in the entire Open era, seen one of its own reach the second week of a Grand Slam. Not one player. Not ever. Not in tennis history for the Philippines. That alone should tell you something. This wasn't a routine third-round match between two ranked players. This was a shot at history for one side and a title defense for the other. Everything was on the line. And this wasn't the first time these two had shared a court. Rewind 16 months. Miami, 2025. Eala, barely known outside tennis circles at the time, walked onto the court against Swiatek and won in straight sets. 6-2, 7-5. That result sent a small shockwave through the sport. But it got filed away as an upset. A young player having one good day against a champion having an off day. That's usually how these stories get remembered. One line in a highlight reel. Nothing more. Except now it's happening again. And this time the stage is bigger. Center court, Wimbledon. A defending champion trying to protect her title in the 3rd round. The opening set alone tells you how serious this got. 84 minutes. 2 set points saved. Swiatek broke first, taking a 2-1 lead, looking every bit like the champion she was supposed to be. Eala broke right back. Back and forth it went, game after game. Until Swiatek found herself serving to stay in the set at 5-5, then somehow clawing her way to 2 set points in the tiebreak. 2 set points. Against a 21-year-old ranked 32 spots below her. This is the moment most players fold. This is the moment careers get defined by collapsing under pressure. Eala saved both. She saved the first with a serve Swiatek couldn't handle. She saved the second when Swiatek netted a forehand under pressure. And on the 3rd set point of that tiebreak, Swiatek finally cracked, missing a forehand long, and Eala took the opening set 11 points to 9. That's not luck. That's not one lucky bounce, or one lucky call from the umpire. That's a young player refusing to let a champion escape when the champion had every chance to. So when Swiatek later stood in front of reporters and said the slow serve broke her mentally, you have to understand what came before that sentence. This wasn't a champion making excuses after a bad day. This was a champion trying to explain how she lost a set she had 2 separate chances to win. How she lost a match she was heavily favored to win. How a 21-year-old with a serve nobody fears turned into the player who ended her title defense. This is where it stops being a simple upset and starts being something worth investigating. Because the numbers from that match don't look like a fluke. They look like a pattern. And once you start pulling on that thread, the story gets a lot stranger than one bad tiebreak. Let's get into the numbers, because this is where things stop making sense. Start with the second serve. In that match, Eala won 55% of her second serve points, 55%, against Iga Swiatek, one of the best return players on the entire tour. A player who has spent years making a living off punishing exactly that shot, the one everyone considers a free opportunity. For context, most players lose more second serve points than they win against elite returners. 55% isn't a good number. It's an alarming one. It means more than half the time Swiatek got a look at that so-called weak serve, she still couldn't turn it into a point. You have to ask yourself, how? Now look at the break. Points. Swiatek got broken 5 times across that match. 5 times. A champion who had just won this exact tournament the year before lost her own serve. 5 times. Eala found a way to apply enough pressure that one of the best players alive couldn't hold her service game. Is this just one bad day for a champion? Or is there something else happening here? Let's go set by set, because the pattern gets clearer the deeper you look. First set, 84 minutes. Swiatek breaks first, looking sharp, looking like herself. Then Eala breaks right back. This happens again and again. Every time Swiatek builds a lead, Eala answers within a game or two. By the time we reach 5-5, Swiatek has already used significant emotional energy just to stay level with a player she was supposed to be handling comfortably. Then the tiebreak. 2 set points for Swiatek. 2 chances to close the door and steady her championship defense. Both saved. Not through desperation, but through calculated shot selection at the exact moments that mattered most. Second set. This is where it gets even harder to explain. Away as a fluke. Eala jumps out to a 4-love lead. 4-0 against the defending champion. On the biggest stage in the sport, Swiatek claws back to 4-2, showing the fight you'd expect from a 3-time major champion. But Eala doesn't blink. She breaks again, pushes to 5-2, and closes out the match 6-2. 6-2 in the second set, against the number 3 seed in the world. So here's the mini question worth sitting with. Was this simply a bad day at the office for one of the best players in tennis? Or was something about Eala's game specifically dismantling Swiatek's rhythm, point after point, game after game, in a way that had nothing to do with luck? Because here's what should worry any analyst trying to explain this away as an off day. Swiatek doesn't have off days like this against players ranked 30 spots below her. This is a woman who has beaten legends on the biggest stages in the sport. Her return game has been dissected by every coach on tour, praised as one of the most efficient in modern tennis. Players don't simply have bad afternoons against a serve everyone considers exploitable. Something else is happening. And this is where the conventional tennis analysis starts to break down. Commentators love simple explanations. She was off her game. She was tired. She underestimated her opponent. But none of those explanations hold up when you look at the discipline Eala showed in that match. The composure at 5-5 in the first set. The nerve to save 2 set points back-to-back. The refusal to ease off after building a 4-love lead in the second set. If this were just one bad day for Swiatek, you'd expect the numbers to look messy. Inconsistent. A champion having an off match usually shows it everywhere. In her footwork. In her shot selection. In her body language. But the story the statistics tell isn't messy. It's remarkably consistent. Every time Swiatek found an opening, Eala closed it. Every time Swiatek built momentum, it disappeared within a game or two. Which brings us to the real problem here. If we can't explain this by saying Swiatek simply played badly, then we're left with a much bigger question. What is it about facing Eala specifically that makes one of the best return players in the world suddenly unable to convert her chances? Because on paper, none of this should be happening. A slower serve is supposed to be an invitation. It's supposed to hand the advantage to the returner. Every coaching manual, every strategy session, every scouting report says the same thing. Attack the second serve. Make them pay for not hitting hard enough. And yet, here we are, watching one of the most disciplined returners in tennis lose breakpoint after breakpoint, unable to solve a puzzle that shouldn't even be difficult. Something about this doesn't fit the way we normally think about tennis at the highest level. And once you understand what it actually is, you'll never watch a slow serve the same way again. Here's what almost every commentator missed about that match. They kept talking about speed, how slow the serve was, how Swiatek should have crushed it. But speed was never the real issue. The real issue was rhythm. Think about what elite tennis actually requires at that level. A player like Swiatek trains her entire body to read pace, to anticipate a ball arriving at a certain velocity, and to react within a split-second window that her brain has calibrated over thousands and thousands of hours on court. Her whole return game is built on timing, not raw reflexes. Timing. Now take that same finely tuned internal clock and feed it something completely outside its calibration. A serve that arrives slower, floatier, landing at a pace her body isn't expecting. Her brain doesn't get a fastball it needs to react to. It gets an unfamiliar rhythm it has to consciously recalculate for. And that split second of recalculation, that tiny mental pause, is exactly where errors creep in. This is the part nobody wants to admit about tennis at the highest level. A player who has spent years mastering how to read 120-mile-an-hour serves can genuinely struggle more against something at 85. If that 85 arrives with a spin and a trajectory, their instincts haven't automated. It's not about difficulty. It's about familiarity. And familiarity is the one thing a slow, deceptive serve strips away. Think of it like a hitter in baseball who has trained his entire career against 95-mile-an-hour fastballs. Give him a devastating changeup, something that looks the same out of the hand but arrives 15 miles an hour slower, and even elite hitters swing early. Not because the pitch is unhittable, because their timing, built for something completely different, betrays them for a fraction of a second. That fraction is enough. That's exactly what was happening to Swiatek on center court. Now here's where the story flips completely. You went into this thinking a slow serve is a weakness, something you tolerate because you can't hit any harder. But listen again to what Swiatek actually said after the match. She called it super slow. She said accepting the missed returns off that serve was tougher mentally than dealing with a normal one. Read between those words. She wasn't describing a limitation. She was describing a weapon that had specifically been aimed at her return game and worked. And when Eala was asked to respond to that comment, she didn't deny it. She didn't downplay it. She said she has never been the biggest server on tour compared to other players, so she uses her serve as an advantage. Not a disadvantage. An advantage. That single word changes everything. This is not a young player getting lucky with a shot she can't fix. This is a 21-year-old who has looked honestly at her own game, recognized what she doesn't have, and built a deliberate strategy around what she does have. She's not hiding a weakness. She's weaponizing a difference. That's the twist. The serve was never something happening to Swiatek by accident. It was something being done to her on purpose, by a player who understood exactly how much damage an unfamiliar rhythm could cause against someone whose entire game is calibrated for pace. But a theory this bold needs more than one match to back it up. If this was really a deliberate weapon and not a one-time fluke, the evidence should show up again. And it does. If you think this was a one-time fluke, look closer, because the pattern goes back further than Wimbledon. Remember Miami, 2025? Same slower, deceptive serve. Same result. Eala beat Swiatek in straight sets. 6-2, 7-5. That match happened 16 months before Wimbledon, long before anyone was talking about mental warfare or rhythm disruption. At the time, it got written off as a nice run for a rising player. One good day. Nothing more. Except now the head-to-head between these two reads, 2 wins for Eala against 1 for Swiatek. Twice. Using the exact same tools, Eala has taken apart one of the best return players in the world. Twice. The story afterward has been about Swiatek struggling to explain what went wrong. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. And patterns in sports don't happen by accident at the highest level. Now here's a moment worth sitting with. After the Wimbledon match, when reporters brought Swiatek's comment about the slow serve back to Eala, she didn't just nod along and accept the credit. She actually paused. She asked the room directly, did she really say that? There was a beat of genuine surprise on her face, like even she hadn't realized just how deep the psychological impact of her own game plan had gone. That reaction tells you something important. This wasn't a player running a calculated mind game and gloating about it afterward. This was a player discovering, almost in real time, just how effective her own strategy had become against one of the toughest opponents in the sport. And once she processed it, her response was simple. I guess I did my job well. Zoom out even further, and the pattern gets bigger. Eala's record, against top 10 opponents, now sits at 7 wins and 4 losses. 7 wins against players ranked inside the top 10 in the world. That is not the record of a player who occasionally catches a bigger name on an off day. That's the record of a player who has figured out something specific and repeatable against elite competition. This connects directly back to the question we started with. Why did a slow serve break a champion mentally? Because it isn't really about the serve in isolation. It's about what that serve represents inside a bigger strategy. One Eala has now used successfully against some of the best players alive. Not once, but as a consistent pattern across her rise up the rankings. And here's the detail that makes this even more interesting. Eala has been open about the fact that she has never considered herself one of the biggest servers on tour. She said it herself. Compared to a lot of players out there, her serve was never going to be a weapon built on raw power. Most players in that position spend years trying to fix that gap, trying to add speed, trying to close the difference between themselves and bigger hitters. Eala did something different. Instead of chasing what she didn't have, she built her entire game around what made her different. At 21 years old, that kind of self-awareness is rare. Most players her age are still trying to become someone else's version of a complete player. She looked at her own limitations and turned them into the exact thing that has now broken down a defending Wimbledon champion twice. So when you put it all together, the 84-minute first set, the 2 saved set points, the 55% second serve win rate, the 5 broken service games, the Miami result from 16 months earlier, and now this, the picture stops looking like luck. It starts looking like a blueprint. The question we opened with is almost answered now. But there's still one piece left. What does this mean going forward, not just for one match, but for everyone left on Swiatek's side of the draw, and everyone still ahead of Eala on tour? So here's the answer. Iga Swiatek didn't lose to a weak serve. She lost to a serve built specifically to break the one thing her entire game depends on: rhythm. What looked like a limitation from the outside was, up close, a weapon aimed with precision at the exact spot where a champion's instincts couldn't help her. And this is bigger than one match at Wimbledon. If this same strategy keeps working against elite returners, Eala isn't just a rising player anymore. She becomes something far more dangerous on tour, the kind of opponent that makes the very best players in the world uncomfortable before the match even starts. 7 wins against top 10. Opponents already tells you she's not chasing the elite. She's already inside that conversation, which raises a question nobody has answered yet. Aryna Sabalenka has faced fast, powerful servers her entire career. Coco Gauff built her return game around handling exactly that kind of pace. Neither of them has had to solve what Swiatek just failed to solve, a serve engineered to feel unfamiliar rather than unhittable. So what happens the first time one of them walks onto a court against Eala, with everything on the line? If you want to see whether Sabalenka or Gauff becomes the next name added to that list, or whether someone finally figures out how to break this pattern, this is exactly the kind of story that keeps unfolding, one match at a time. Stick around, because the next chapter of this might already be closer than you think.